gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hello, and welcome to this edition of Political Smackdown. I'm Betsy Wells, your host, and we have with us our usual group. We have Mike Philbeck to my right, former Mayor of Shelby, Wes Westmoreland to my left, former state senator, and Andy Dedman to my extreme left, who is our former House of Representative. Before we get started with our political discussion, I want to wish our 39th president, Jimmy Carter, a belated happy birthday. President Carter turned 100 years old on October 1st, the longest living president in American history. He was a peanut farmer from the small town of Plains, Georgia, and he served as president from 1977 to 1981. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1981 for his work to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts, to advance democracy and human rights, and to promote economic and social development. He aspired to make the government competent and compassionate for the American people. He worked hard to combat the continuing economic woes and inflation and unemployment. At the end of his administration, he could claim an increase in nearly 8 million jobs, a decrease in the budget deficit. He sought to improve the environment, expanded the national park system, and created the Department of Education, bolstered the Social Security system, and appointed a record number of women, blacks, and Hispanics to government jobs. A humanitarian, he started with his wife Rosalind, Habitat for Humanity. He's an author, also a painter. Any more comments about President Carter? Andy, we're going to begin?
Well, I mean, he's an interesting fellow. I mean, and he's got so many health issues right now, Betsy. He's just basically just a shadow of what he was, but he went to Annapolis. He was a submarine guy. He was on a nuclear submarine during most of his tenure in the Navy. It was a very interesting way he campaigned. It was a big deal because he carried his own luggage while he campaigned. He was one of the first ones that really made a big deal about going to Iowa and going door to door and doing all this. He really made an effort in these early states. He kind of changed the way people started looking at these early primary states. He made a lot of difference in things. I don't think he ever really got a lot of the credit he probably deserved. Main thing he's probably remembered more than anything about was his Playboy interview. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I was watching somewhere, I forget which one, I think it was on NBC on Today's Show, and they were talking about his birthday being 100. And he talked about how much trouble he got in with Rosalind doing that interview. So yeah, it was pretty interesting for a Southern Baptist guy doing an interview and some of the things he said in that interview. But it was pretty clear cut on a lot of issues. But he was, I think it showed after all that with Watergate and whatnot, it was kind of a breath of fresh air, and it showed that a good man could win. I thought it was interesting that after he came in, Ronald Reagan, who I thought was a good man too, didn't agree with a lot of spot, but he was a good man. So we were fortunate after all that with Nixon, we had Ford, who was also a good man, and we showed that good guys could win. So I thought that was an interesting thing that we were able to do that.
Okay, Mike?
Betsy, you left out a couple of things he was well known for as president. Biggest thing was he couldn't get the hostages out of Iran
Right.
in 444 days, and they came out the day Reagan was inaugurated. After Reagan won 44 states, he was one of the most unpopular presidents of our lifetime. And like Bush #1 was a one-term president.
Yes, he was.
And I will say that I congratulate him on living to be 100 and for all the humanitarian efforts he's done since he was president. But I think he was a decent man, but not a really good president, but he was a very decent man.
All right, Wes, I know you're just dying to talk about all these wonderful things about President Carter.
Oh, yeah, Wes, and he created double-digit inflation.
Well, I was fixing to say,
I
you left
wondered
out
when
one of
you
the
left
obvious,
out-
but nevertheless,
Yeah.
no, I do think President Carter was a good man. I think he probably has the greatest legacy post-presidency of anyone who has held that office. But his time as president was horrendous. And I found a picture that really explains it. This may be one of the reasons he had such trouble as president, because of his advisor. But congratulations, happy birthday, and I'm glad that President Carter lived long enough to see someone who will go down in history with an administration worse than his.
Oh, Wes. And
Wes.
Wes.
Let's get the third one in.
And one of the things, I went down to Plains, Georgia several years ago.
You went to
back-
Sunday school class,
I
didn't you?
did. I went
my
to the
mom
Sunday
did too.
school
She
class.
said it
And
was
I
really
tell you,
interesting, yeah.
it's amazing that that man got elected from that little bitty town in Plains, Georgia.
And we probably ought to mention Ethel Kennedy passed away
Oh, yes,
yesterday.
yes, we've lost the matriarch of the Robert Kennedy family, Ethel Kennedy, passed away yesterday.
96 years old, I think.
And
And
11 kids.
And
Can you
oh
imagine?
yes, and she was pregnant when he died, with the 11th
Really?
one. Yes.
Can you imagine having 11
And
kids?
Rosalind and Jimmy stopped at Kings Mountain at the McDonald's out there on 85. They came in to get a biscuit. And the people at McDonald's were just served, this has been about 5 years ago, they were just serving biscuits, and they recognized who they were, even though they came in the black vehicles and the Secret Service agents. And when Rosalind looked at Jimmy and said, "You want a bacon and cheese egg biscuit, Jimmy?" And that's when they took pictures, and then they got in their car and they went on up the road. He never wanted to be in a huge amount of limelight. His house, very common, ordinary 3-bedroom house, did not want the fence around it until they insisted when they took the fence down around President Nixon's home when he died in Florida, and they put the fence up. But now, during his time, people made good money on their investments because certainly interest rates were so high. We built a house during that time, and our interest rate was 15%, but we dropped it later on. But we'll move on now, but President Carter certainly had his ups and downs as president, but a great humanitarian. And Ethel Kennedy, the foundation that she established in Robert's memory is certainly worthy to be talked about. All right, let's talk about the storm. Helene came through, brought huge devastation to western North Carolina. There were 13 counties that were originally deemed emergency counties because of damage and loss of property and life. Now that's been up to 27, and Cleveland County is one of those. And my home, Ashe County, is one of the 13. The General Assembly was called back to Raleigh for a one-day session on October 10th to deal with this horrific tragedy. They passed a $273 million Helene relief bill. What will it do, Mike?
Well, the $273 million passed by the North Carolina General Assembly and signed by Governor Cooper was passed unanimously with 100% of the votes and both parties voting for it. So they did get together on this very important disaster issue. But that's basically a match for FEMA grants and other things from the feds, and that's just the beginning. They're going back in 2 weeks, and there will be more. I'm glad we have a $4.75 billion emergency fund because they're going to need some substantial amount of it for western North Carolina over the next year or so. So the Board of Elections unanimously, the State Board of Elections unanimously put 13 counties on notice that they can do a lot of things as boards of election without coming to the state board so long as their vote is bipartisan. And they can close and open different sites for early voting or day of voting. People that are displaced from a county can absentee ballot from another county in these now 25 counties. It was only going to be 13 from the Board of Elections, but the legislature's bill expanded that to 25 counties. So they are making accommodations to people who are displaced in western North Carolina. And as we speak 2 weeks after the storm, a city as big as Asheville still, only portions of that city have a water supply. So it's a terrible, terrible tragedy. But the politics of it so far have united the parties in Raleigh to help these folks.
Good. All right, Andy?
Well, it also, you know, they always have a lot of problems up in the mountains, snow days and all like that. But it also, this grants them a lot more flexibility as far as school days by allowing them to make up or mark as completed any number of days or hours that have been missed. It also allows them schools to make up or use up to 30 remote instruction days required toward those instruction days. It also gives them a lot of flexibility as far as what to do as far as building requirements, and a lot of this so they can use other type buildings that might be available as long as it's safe and able to be used. So that gives them ability to do some things, but also some other things too that I thought was interesting that in this bill. It also allows that right now there's a 6-month separation requirement if somebody leaves state government before they can come back. That's been waived. So if somebody, let's say, heavy equipment operators at DOT have retired, now they can come right back without being waived. Because people like that who we're in desperate need of, if they want to come back, they don't have to wait out. So that kind of thing is also good too. It temporarily waives the accrual of interest on certain state taxes for underpayment of taxes, that sort of thing, for all on franchise, corporate, or individual income taxes. Temporarily extends some provisional license for adult care homes and family care homes that are in the impacted areas. So, I mean, it does a lot of stuff. It gives some immediate relief to a lot of people on a lot of issues. And it's something that helps immediately. And that's why this thing was passed unanimously and why the governor signed it so quick. It's right there, right now. It gives people a helping hand when they need it the most.
All right, Wes?
Only thing that I really would add, one, reinforce the voting. Early voting starts next Thursday, as this show
17th.
airs on the 17th, and that's going to be important to the people who can't get anywhere. So that's been opened up, easier to get absentee ballots. But I think, Betsy, aside from the immediate, an equally immediate need is rebuilding the wastewater and drinking water infrastructure. That hampers everything. Doesn't matter if the school building's in good shape. If there's no water, you can't have school. So this helps with that as well. So good job to North Carolina government, governor and General Assembly.
And I think, and the Speaker Moore said that October 24th, the legislators would come back into session. They did not do anything about individual projects that had been requested from individual representatives throughout the West, and that this money was to go to state agencies for spending flexibility. And I'm talking with Perry Davis from our Emergency Management Office here in Cleveland County. He told me that the lady from FEMA had been here all this week, taking out applications, and that there would be a team next week coming into Cleveland County that will be going door to door to be taking applications for FEMA in less and underserved areas. And also now, when you fill out your application, be sure and fill it out completely. But he stressed that it would not clean up yard work or yard debris. But if next week they have contracted with a debris a group that's going to be coming in. If you can get your yard debris over to the edge of the road, so where it's in the right of way, they will come around and be cleaning up that from your yard, but they will not come into your yard to do so.
One thing
so,
that you
Andy?
need to realize too, Mayor, talking about this bill, not only was it unanimous, but also the minority leaders in Senate and House were consulted with.
Yes.
So I think that was very important. They were in the mix too.
And that's how government should work, isn't it? All right, well, that's our first part of our show today. Come back and be with us for the second part of Political Smackdown.
Want change? Like things the way they are? Use your rights and vote. Take a stand for your beliefs. Why wouldn't you vote? Don't make excuses. It's not every day you can take a stand on community, state, and national issues. Think your vote won't change anything? In 2008, only 3,632 votes separated the presidential race in the state of Missouri. 3,632. Every vote counts. Speak up. Only you can silence your voice. Go to your local polling place and be heard on this election day.
Chef Paul Prudhomme once said, "You don't need a silver fork to eat good food." Well, on Cleveland County Kitchen, we don't have a silver fork, but we sure do serve up lots of good food. Hi, I'm Deborah Blanton. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen. Each month, we offer a complete farm-to-table experience. We visit local growers, we learn about nutrition, and wrap things up with wonderful meals prepared by our guest chefs. It's a lot of fun. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen.
And welcome back to this edition of Political Smackdown. Sometime I wish that you could hear the conversations during the break, but we'll just move on. The storm, and continuing talking about the storms, they've been the center of the news cycle in the last 2 weeks. First with Hurricane Helene and Milton that went through Florida yesterday, and thank goodness it wasn't as damaging as they thought, but still it was damaging. And it's days away from our huge 2024 election, date of November 5th. Like Wes told you earlier, early voting starts next week, October the 17th. And there's 4 voting sites in Cleveland County. But a disturbing item has emerged on the news scene in the huge amounts of misinformation and lies that abound on the internet and other outlets about the storms. Misleading statements about FEMA, about government, the Democrats. There's no place for this type of malarkey in the lives of those affected. What do you think? Wes, take us away.
Malarkey, quite often it's in the eye of the beholder. Representative Chuck Edwards addressed it this week, as did Representative Fox and Governor DeSantis. It does appear that FEMA and the Biden-Harris administration got a mulligan after being caught flat-footed in North Carolina with the storm in Florida. But the press conference this week was an absolute joke. Talk about politicizing something. The feds got caught flat-footed in North Carolina, but they made up with preparations in Florida. 17 deaths, terrible toll, but I had a hard time finding a headline on it this morning, the day after it hit, the storm in Florida.
Most of those deaths in Florida were from tornadoes within the
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were. Thank
But
goodness it's
Betsy, I do
less.
think we have to realize FEMA is not a first responder.
No,
First responder falls to cities and counties and states, which I think generally do a good job. FEMA is a second responder, and it's a government-run agency. It is never going to be efficient. It is never going to do a good job. I'm sure it's always going to be welcome when you're hit like this, but it's like dealing with the post office. It's never going to go well. And this political season, we see this every 4 years. You remember Katrina, I'm sure.
oh, how can we forget Katrina?
It's really a shame that the vice president is trying to nose into this when she's been absent for the past 3 years, never been involved, and now complaining about the governor of Florida, who's obviously doing a great job.
And so, Andy, I think she came to North Carolina, didn't she? She came to Asheville.
Yeah, that was
Then
helpful.
President Biden came and looked at the...
and she's getting ready to come back. But and I mean, more than anything else, the vice president really doesn't have any real authority when it comes to this sort of thing. It all falls to the president. More than anything, she's just coming as a concerned a member of the administration, and also as a candidate, which she should come should, like any other candidate, not to get in the way, but to show that they are concerned, and more as a fact-finding thing to take back to the president. And the way I look at this too is, and Wes is correct, and a lot of people are confused about FEMA's role, and I can't believe myself. I'm agreeing with Governor of Florida, I mean, he is
Heck, you
correct.
agreed with me. If you can buy that, you can buy anything.
Ain't that the gospel? Anyway, FEMA is there as to assist the state response. It's what do you need, and that's the one thing that. And he was very kind, President Biden. He said spoke to President Biden several times and had been very helpful in trying to get the help that they need, which and that was in complete opposition to what President Trump had said. Fancy that. So, I mean, that's what you got to look at. This is people that are just in terrible position. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, Milton wasn't as bad as they feared at first. Yeah. Bad enough, but not as bad as it could have been. So we've just got to concentrate on what we can do, not only to help the folks with Helene, especially in our own backyards,
right, in our county,
but also to help these folks. It's getting to the point we've got to rethink our disaster relief in this country, because people can say what they want, Betsy. We are having climate change. Things are worse than they have been. I mean, there's no doubt there has been a change. So what can we do?
That's not statistically correct.
Oh my goodness, what kind of 10-ton weight do you need to fall on your head?
I'll follow up on that.
All right, that'll be fine. But we've
That's
got to
another
be
question.
able to figure out what can we do to be better prepared in the future for hurricanes and this sort of thing. We've got to be prepared better than we are, to where we can pre-position what's needed in a safer area where they can roll out quicker. That's the kind of stuff we need to be waiting on. We
Okay.
need to be prepared.
All right, Mike?
Well, there has been a lot of misinformation on the internet, not only by both sides in the presidential candidacy thing, but by just a lot of people who just talk off the top of their head and don't know what they're talking about. And you know, there's so much of what's on the internet that you have to look twice. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times I have seen Facebook posts that say, Andy, that Caitlin Clark is quitting basketball, which is not true. And people just put crazy stuff on the internet now. So beware of what you pay attention to on the internet and the actual source of it. But it's a shame that, it is a shame that FEMA has allocated, like it or not, and I don't like it, they have allocated money to put up illegal aliens in these big sanctuary cities.
I wondered how long it'd be
Pay
before
them
we
every
talked
month,
about
give them
that.
a cell phone.
Oh, listen.
It's just a fact,
Oh.
Betsy, and they should not be using the people's money that's for federal emergency management in that manner, in my opinion.
So, Mike, if say like a person is displaced, has no home, and is destitute, has children, then they should just let them starve and let them be on
Illegal
the street
aliens
if
should
they're
be turned
illegal.
away at the border,
Well-
not put up in cities.
But there's reality to it. We have many that
The
are here in
reality is
America.
the Democrats hate America
that
and
is
want
so
the illegals
untrue.
to be here illegally.
Oh, Michael,
I wish you
Michael.
just showed me where
Oh,
that's
Michael.
written that Democrats hate America.
Yes, I do too.
I really wish you'd
It's the
show me
evidence.
that.
It is
Show
not
me
the
where
evidence.
that is written.
That's some of that other
Show it
stuff
to
on
me.
the internet.
That
Anyway.
is so wrong.
Well, why don't you
Mike.
tell us
All
how
right.
illegal crossings are down, Betsy?
Oh, well, we're going to talk about that later. But anyway, all right, Mike, anything else?
No, I'm done.
Well, I was pleased to see Tom Tillis, who was our senator, to come out against all this misinformation. But Andy, do you know they gave Democrats the ability to control the weather? That one of the big lies about this is that the Democrats was able to cause these storms.
I must have missed that secret meeting.
See, I know, I did too. I didn't get that memo, did you?
No, I did not.
I didn't
Betsy-
see it in my bank account either.
But
And
see,
also-
Democrats cause enough
Oh,
storms
listen,
without getting involved with the
And
weather.
then other lies about FEMA is that that they're turning everybody away. But if you do have to fill out the form, but Wes, it is like the first responders are the ones that are in our communities, American Red Cross, the other rescue people, and then FEMA is the agency that will come in and will give you $750 right up front after you apply to help you with benefits, and it does not affect your taxes. And then you can keep on applying, but now, like I said a while ago, they won't clean up your yard. But anyway, anything else, guys? Do you think we've talked about this one enough? Then we'll.
Pretty
We'll
well.
move right on into the last question. USA Today on October 9th ran this headline: illegal crossings at the border at the lowest level since 2020, which also ran in the October 9th edition of the Shelby Star. I think we've already talked about this when we were talking about the other one. We'll come back and talk about it another time. I think it's time to go to the lightning round. And my lightning round is I wanted to make sure that I spoke about Emmanuel Hunt Jr. is a write-in candidate on the ballot for county commissioner for the Democrats, so be sure and write his name in as you vote for the other two Democrats listed there, David Peace and Stormy McGello. All right, Andy, what have you got today?
Well, as usual, Mike has accused us Democrats of not being wanting to give something to everybody. My sweetie has worried about Mike and his technology, so she has got a jug and has made a Mike's Technology Fund. In fact, we were having some kind of a fundraising thing earlier on. We threw a $1 bill in it. Wes has put $1 in it, as well as Betsy. So we have had a good fundraiser for Mike. Hopefully we can get his technology fund growing to where maybe we can get past 2 cans and a string in his office at some point. So Democrats do care, Mike, so we're trying to help you out, bud.
All right, Mike.
Well, I have heard this statement, and I have a little illustration of it from Betsy and other Democrats my whole life. We're going to make the rich pay their fair share. And here is a cartoon that I found this week that illustrates something we all know is true. You see the Democrats saying she'll make the rich pay their fair share, and you see a reporter, it says here at the top 5% pay 60% of all federal income tax. So Betsy, how much would be a fair share?
All right. Wes, how about you?
That's fungible. In the fiscal year that just ended, the federal budget deficit grew to $1.8 trillion, bringing the national debt to $35.6 trillion. Revenues, however, grew by 11%. So the federal government took in $4.9 trillion, but spent $6.75 trillion. Betsy, the problem is not revenue, it's spending. Doesn't matter what the fair share is. Neither party is willing to address this. Both Trump and Harris plans will add somewhere between $2 and $7 trillion to the deficit. Government has an endless appetite, and unless we, the people, control it, it's going to continue to grow, and it doesn't appear that we're willing. And Betsy, this has been now 370 days that people are held hostage by Hamas, including Americans.
And we did observe the 1-year anniversary to that tragedy this past week. And also remember that early voting does start this coming Thursday on October 17th at 4 sites here in the county at the LeGrand Center, then in Willing Springs at Town Hall, at the Water Board building there in Longdale, and at the Patrick Senior Center in Kings Mountain. Check the Board of Election for times and hope that you'll go vote early, and then be sure and vote on November the 5th. And you can also register and vote at early voting the same day. That concludes our show this week. Hope you've learned something. Come back next week for our next edition of Political Smackdown.
Hello, I'm Tony Fogelman, Vice President of Workforce Development here at Cleveland Community College, and you're watching C19 TV, broadcast service courtesy of Cleveland Community College.